My name is Nicole Siebert. I work as a postdoctoral researcher at the Otto von Guericke University in Magdeburg in Germany, and I'm specialized in entrepreneurship research, and my biggest interest is actually in social entrepreneurship, especially in social business models and impact scaling. So in order to answer this question, it is first and foremost important to understand what a business model actually is. So in general, the business model describes how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. So these three things are important for the business model. And on an abstract level, one can imagine the business model as a social value proposition or a social product and service that's delivered to a target group, and from this usually social target group, value needs to be captured, usually in the form of income, and it can then be used to create again the value proposition. So we have a closed cycle of value creation, delivery, and capture, and once that's achieved, the business model is actually conceptually self-sustainable, which means financial sustainability is achieved. And when we take the example of a social entrepreneur who wants to do something for the community and maybe help the homeless people, then he or she needs to come up with an idea how this value creation, delivery, and capture can be set up in a sustainable way. In coming up with a business model, the entrepreneur has to take two key decisions. The first one is it needs to be clear what role the social target group in the business model should have. It can, on the one hand, be a consumptive role, which means the social target group is a pure recipient of the social products and services. Or, on the other hand, it can be a productive role, which means the social target group is productively integrated within the business model. Decision number one. Decision number two is the value offering. And here the entrepreneur has, again, two options. The first option is to offer a social value offering, which means a purely social product or service. And the other option is to offer a hybrid value offering, which is a combination between a social and a commercial product. And those two decisions are essential in coming up with a social business model for the social entrepreneur. So, two key decisions: the role of the social target group and the value offering. The first strategy is the supporting social target groups, and behind the strategy we have the donor model. And in the donor model we have usually social products and services that are offered to social target groups, but usually they are disadvantaged and cannot afford the social products and services. So what does the entrepreneur do? He or she, they search for someone else who's willing to provide the financial funds, so the donations, to make the product available for the social target groups. Coming back to our initial example, it would mean that the entrepreneur, in order to, for example, provide food to homeless people of the community, would maybe look for local citizens or corporations that are close by and that are willing to provide some donations in order to make the food provision available for the homeless people. So that is the supporting social target group strategy. The second strategy is the empowering social target groups. And here we have the model that is traditionally known as the self-help model. And in the self-help model, the social products and services are made available to the social target group with the help of their own means, their own productive input, and they're somehow enabled, empowered to satisfy their own needs. And coming back to our initial example, it would mean that the entrepreneur sets up, in a way, something like a community kitchen, a place where homeless people can come to and can cook for themselves, and maybe the food supplies are provided, but actually they're enabled to help themselves by cooking for themselves. And the third strategy is the utilization or utilizing social target groups. And here we have a model that's called the asset model. And in the asset model, the social target group is again, productively integrated in the business model, but it's actually employed as real employees in order to produce commercial products for regular customers, and they also pay revenues for these products and services. And the social target group is employed because they usually have a special ability, a special capability that's used as an asset in this model. And for our initial example, if we go back to that, we can think of homeless people, what kind of special asset they have. And usually they're very well aware of the community they live in, they know the places, and they maybe look at things differently than local citizens or tourists. So what the entrepreneur could do in using this special asset is he or she could use them to maybe provide guided tours to local citizens or to tourists that come to visit the city. And the fourth strategy is promoting social target groups. And here we have something that is called the corporate model. And in the corporate model, we have the entrepreneur who sells commercial products to commercial target groups for regular market revenues. So a very traditional corporate process. But what is added here is on top social products for a social target group that is a pure recipient, so they're just receiving those products, and it's actually added on top. And one can imagine, taking our example with the homeless people, what could the entrepreneur do? Just imagine an entrepreneur that sells, for example, food like pizza or burgers to its regular customers, receiving money for them, and for each meal that is sold, the entrepreneur could add a meal for homeless people in the community. And it's like a buy one and we give one to someone who's disadvantaged. So like a one-for-one systematic that we have here. And those 4 generic strategies are available, and behind each of the strategies there's a different social business model that can be applied by the entrepreneur. Yes, combinations are possible, and the abstract model actually helps entrepreneurs to combine new models. And we can take, for example, the donor model, the support of social target groups, and the self-help model, where we have the productive input, combine it to a new model, which is the volunteer model. And going back to our example, in the volunteer model, the entrepreneur would actually search, acquire local citizens, maybe employees of corporations that work close by, and ask them to support the homeless people by maybe cooking for them, preparing the food, serving the food. So working pro bono as volunteers in order to make the food available for homeless people. Another combination could be from the self-help model, the productive input, and the asset model, which is the idea to have 2 different target groups that are combined. And this leads to something that is called the matching model. And in the matching model, we have 2 different social target groups who are combined and actually help each other. And here the entrepreneur, in our example, it would mean that the homeless people are served meals or food provision, and the entrepreneur would therefore acquire another social target group, which could maybe be long-time unemployed people that live in the community, and he or she could help them to gain first job experience by cooking for the homeless, helping with the food provision. 2 different social target groups combined here in this business model. A third combination could be of the asset model, the complementary consumption, and the corporate model, where we have the idea to add something social on top. And this would lead to something that's called the leverage model. And in the leverage model, we have social target groups that are productively integrated. They work as employees, but that they work as employees is actually set on top of a very commercial process in traditional companies. And in our example with the homeless people, it would mean that the entrepreneur actually employs them as regular employees, paying them a salary, and, for example, to cook meals in a traditional restaurant for guests of this restaurant. They pay for their meals, and whatever they have in terms of income, this is used to finance the employment program of the homeless people in this special restaurant. And a fourth model that's possible is a combination of the corporate model, where we have the idea to add something social on top, and the donor model, where we have the donor support. And this leads to something that we call the partner model. And in the partner model, the entrepreneur actually combines a very commercial process oriented at commercial target groups and market income with the idea of collecting donations, so for this social target group. And for our example, it would mean that maybe the entrepreneur would try to partner with a supermarket that is close by, and in the supermarket they sell all the products to the supermarket customers in return for revenues. And by doing that, the entrepreneur offers the chance for them to either donate supplies or to donate money in order to make food provision available for homeless people of the community. And this would be a fourth combinations that is possible of the four initial models that we discussed earlier. So after this business modeling with the archetypes, the two key decisions that were made, and setting up an archetype that corresponds with the social mission, the next step for the social entrepreneur would be to set up a more detailed business model by, for example, using the business model canvas from Osterwalder Ingenieur. And a next step after that would be setting up the business plan that is most of the time needed for the social entrepreneur to acquire some form of financial support for the idea. So coming back to our example, it would mean that the entrepreneur has to specify what kind of activities are important, such as the cooking or the acquisition of resources. It would mean that maybe it needs to be specified what kind of distribution channels to use, in terms of maybe street workers are important to get to the homeless people, to acquire them as social customers, or further resources needed to be acquired, maybe a town hall where the food provision could be implemented. So several things that need to be further specified for the social entrepreneur.